What is a single malt whiskey? That's the topic of today's video. Stick around and we'll jump into that. But before we do, please take a second and hit the subscribe button so you can be sure to get updated on all of our new videos. Hi, I'm Tim from Elma Wine and Liquor. Today we are talking single malt. What is a single malt, you ask? It is a designation on the way a whiskey is made. Single means one distillery, so that's where the single comes from. Malt comes from the fact that these single malts must be made with 100% malted barley. So single malt, one distillery, all barley. There are some variations depending on the region of the world where these single malts are made, but that single distillery, 100% malted barley, pervades around the world as the definition of a single malt, whether formally or informally. So the opposite of a single malt would be a blended whiskey. Refers to either it comes from different distilleries or they're using something else other than malted barley, different types of grain, such as wheat, corn, rye. One of the most famous blended whiskeys out there that a lot of people are familiar with is Johnny Walker. That is a Scotch whiskey that is a blend of different distilleries. Diageo, the company that owns Johnny Walker, also owns a lot of distilleries around Scotland. They take those different single malts and blend them together to make a blended whiskey. Single malt, single distillery, 100% malted barley. We're going to start with Scotland because that's where single malts originated from. In Scotland, there are some different regions of single malts, and there are some laws about what they have to do to be called a single malt. So, first off, single distillery, 100% malted barley, aged minimum 3 years in oak barrels. Now, one of the biggest differentiators between Scotch and whiskey in a lot of parts of the world, as opposed to bourbon whiskey, is that Scotch can use previously used oak barrels. So a lot of Scotch likes to use ex-American bourbon barrels because they've already been used. It's cheaper for them to acquire, and the oak is not as prevalent anymore. The bourbon has sucked out a lot of the oak influence. Scotch also likes to use a lot of sherry butts, which add a little bit fruitier, complex flavors to the whiskey as it ages. A couple of the big regions of Scotch are the Highlands, which are known for their sweeter, more fruit-forward types of Scotch, and Islay Scotches, which are known for their smokier flavors. And then there's also another region called Speyside, which is also a little bit sweeter like the Highlands, tend to have a lot more honey characteristics as well. And there are plenty more regions within Scotland, but those are the big three that you'll see on the shelves most often. Now, Scotland has the minimum 3-year oak aging for it to be called a single malt Scotch. However, most of these distilleries are aging their whiskeys much longer than 3 years. And that's in part because they're using these used barrels. The oak isn't going to overpower the whiskey, but it gives it more time to evolve and to integrate different flavors that are left in the barrels and from the distillation itself. 8 years is probably on the younger side of Scotch that we typically see on the shelves around here. 12 years is much more common, and they go up 15, 18, 30 years and even longer sometimes. They get much pricier as they age, partially because of evaporation, leaks, they lose product, the time it takes to wait for it. Jumping across the water over to Ireland, they also have single malts. They are pretty similar to Scotch in their definition, single distillery, 100% malted barley, and 3-year minimum aging. Irish whiskey in general has a 3-year minimum aging requirement, which is usually put on the label somewhere. Irish whiskey typically uses a triple distillation process, which leads to a lighter, more refined type of whiskey. Also tends to be a little bit sweeter. And they also use ex-bourbon barrels, occasionally some sherry, and those types of barrels as well from Europe, but a lot of ex-bourbon barrels. Jameson is not actually a single malt. It is a blended Irish whiskey, but Irish whiskey in general has been seeing a massive resurgence over the last few years, and more single malts are coming back onto the market after years of not seeing many single malts from Ireland. So it's exciting to see that country and their single malt evolve as we go forward as well. Jumping over to the United States, American single malt whiskeys is something that got an official designation in December of 2024 by the authority that regulates alcohol labels in the United States, the TTB. So it now has a legal definition. It has a legal meaning on the label. Similar to Scotch in Ireland, one distillery, 100% malted barley. However, in the United States, there is no minimum aging requirement. So right now, because it is still in its infancy in the US, some distilleries are putting out 2 or 3 year old single malts. Some are going a little bit longer. And I think over the next decade or two, as this category continues to grow and evolve, we're going to see some amazing products from the United States. And we're going to start seeing regionalities between the American single malts, like what Scotland has with their Highlands, Islay, Speysides, and things like that. One of the biggest producers right now of American single malts is Westland, which is out of Washington State. There are some big producers in Texas, Virginia, Oregon that are all kind of vying for the market share of American single malts, which, as I said, is still very young and will continue to grow over the next decade or two. Another country that's been getting a lot of attention in the single malt category, winning some massive awards and getting named on the top 20 lists of Whiskey Advocate every year, is India, in that they were once a colony. So there is a legacy of Scotch drinking there that has led to their own introduction of single malt production in the country. India has a unique advantage because of the heat. The aging happens much faster in these oak barrels. The wood is absorbing and spitting out that whiskey much faster. So younger whiskeys at 3 to 5 years old are already tasting like they've been aged a decade or so somewhere else. It's also a unique style compared to the other single malts from around the world. Definitely worth a try if you haven't had one yet. And their laws are pretty similar to the rest of the world that we went over. Single distillery, 100% malted barley. They're a little bit more relaxed on the aging as well, but for the most part, it still has that same overall definition. So that's single malts in a couple of the regions around the world that are producing some quality ones right now. There are some others, and Taiwan has a growing industry in that realm as well. Japanese has a growing industry in the single malts as well. Keep your eye out for single malts now that you know what that term actually means. If you've had a great single malt, whether from Scotland, the US, wherever in the world, please drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear about it. If you learned something new, please share that in the comments. Or if you want to know something else, ask away. We'd love to answer your questions, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers.